Hello guys, welcome to my channel. I hope everything's okay in your life. In this video you will find an updated version of series I prepared in the previous years. You're in luck for listening to the explanation because I felt the need to quickly discuss the content of the video. Each video will feature an interview with a class master about either the succession or awakening versions of a class. All videos, including the older ones, will be available in the playlist you see on the screen. You can find the link of the playlist in the pinned comment section. The purpose of this video series is to help you understand the basic role of the class within the game. I must clarify that it is not a deeply detailed guide. You will watch an interview in a conversational style aimed at answering the fundamental questions of those interested in playing a class. The class masters featured are experienced players who have dedicated thousands of hours to their class and to the Black Desert Online. You may recognize some and not the others, but unfamiliarity does not make them bad players. All the class masters mentioned have proven themselves in Black Desert Online world. Please be respectful when sharing your thoughts. Enjoy watching. Hello guys, welcome. Today's guest is Jason. How are you, Jason? Welcome.
I'm doing alright, How are you?
Thank you so much. Today we will talk about Awakening Valkyrie, also my old mate. May you please introduce yourself? Who are you? Where are you from? Which server are you playing at?
My username is ChampionJason. Most people just call me Jason though. I'm 23 years old and I'm a student from Germany and playing on the Europe server.
Thank you so much. How did you find out of BDO and what caught your interest to stay in BDO?
In 2016, a friend of mine was playing BDO and suggested me to try it out. I was mainly playing League of Legends back then, but over the coming months I just played more and more BDO and less League. And especially since I started playing Node Wars, where gear was a very relevant factor back then and still is to this day. I wanted to be competitive and make sure to stay on par with the others. So I had to spend more time in it, and overall the combat system has for sure been the main factor for me to just stick with the game over the 7 years now. Being able to use key combinations instead of just pressing F1 to F12 on my keyboard just appeals a lot more to me compared to many other MMOs.
Have you ever taken a break from playing BDO? If so, what motivated you to come back?
I haven't really taken a larger break from the game. I have phases where I only play Node War Siege really and don't grind too much and just play other games on the side, especially if there's like a new game coming out. But otherwise, I've never stopped starting the game when I was at home.
Okay. How long have you been playing the class you're currently playing? Have you tried any other class?
I started with Valkyrie back when I started the game for the first time. Shortly after that, DK got released though, and I was in love with the weapon and the design, so I played Dark Knight for about 1 year, and then early 2018, I picked up Valkyrie again as my main class, and since then I've stayed with her for any PvP related content. I've played many other classes for PvE, especially since we've gotten the tagging system, to not get bored when grinding though.
Alright, so what sets the class you play apart from the other classes? What is special thing on Awakening Valkyrie?
Back when I started, it was one of the few all-rounders that kind of had everything in the game, looking at it from the old perspective of the damage, tank, support Trinity system. She kind of had everything back then, and to this day I would still consider her to be one of the best all-rounders the game has and ever had, and one of the strongest large-scale PvP classes throughout the years that a guild would always be looking to have.
I totally agree about the large scale part. Awakening Valkyrie right now, I think if you ask me, it's over like Witch and Wizard because the supportive wise on the class is amazing. Your Rabam is giving buff, your heals are amazing, especially the purification is you're turning into like a healing simulator. You're just heal bomb your allies and it helps your entire guild, entire platoon a lot. And also it's not like the old times, but your ultimate and your vacuum is doing a pretty good job in these days. Your ultimate in the past times was like one-shotting people, but in these days HP pool increased and the cap is just reduced your damage because of the HP pool. It's impossible to one-shot or destroy people, but instead of damage bomb, it turned into some kind of CC bomb, and the old things that I just explained, that's why I'm calling the best large scale. Of course, people may think different.
Yeah, I do agree. The damage part these days is a bit less, but the tank and support part for sure has increased over the years. And by now, I would call it together with Shy by far the best support class. Having protected heals makes it far better than Witch Wizard when it comes to support, in my opinion.
Yeah. So what is your current gear score? Do you rush your gear progress or you take it easy type of guy?
On my highest gear score build currently, I have 756 gear score. I have a few swap out accessories to adjust my build for more offensive or defensive playstyles. So I have Cadres, I have some ominous rings, a Tabak belt whenever for like Node War, etc., where it's kind of nice. I try to stay ahead of the average gear score in my guild and be as close to hardcap as time allows me to be. So currently I'm missing 4 items to be considered hardcap on my main gear, which would be a Ted Labrusca helmet, 2 Pendaborekas, and the Splendid Alchemy Stone.
Thank you. Is your class evasion or damage reduction or both playable and why?
For the majority of players, I would say it's damage reduction. You don't really have any evasion passives or self buff that would make evasion incredibly good compared to many other classes. With the upcoming evasion rework, something of a hybrid build might be a possibility. I know, for example, military has evasion gear prepared to try it out with both accessories and armors. I sadly don't have the financial capabilities in the game to prepare for that. I will go with whatever happens to be the best afterwards.
Yeah, mi amigo military is a gear lord. Of course, he can do some kind of meme builds, but it's 100% damage reduction class. No doubt for that.
Currently, yes, yeah, for sure. Maybe like with the upcoming stuff, I don't know, maybe you can like put in one evasion armor or something and it's gonna make you more tanky. I don't know with how they rework it, right? Nobody knows. But for now, like, yeah.
So is your class newbie friendly? On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate its difficulty? If you want, you can separate it as Succession and Awakening.
I haven't played Succession a lot, so I don't think I can really comment on it, and I would let other people's opinion guide you on that one. For Awakening, I would say it's fairly easy to be useful in group PvP content, since you can stay very protected if you want to, especially with lingering super armors, and you offer incredible utility to other players with 3 very good heals, one of them even giving the super armor to your nearby allies, the vacuum, the protective area. So I'd rank it like 2 out of 10 in difficulty for starting to be useful and like being a good class to add into your main raid. I still believe though that the difference between a new VAC player and an experienced VAC player is very noticeable, especially for your allies in smaller scale content, so in like 3v3s or 5v5 something, and how much they go beyond those mentioned tasks of just pressing heals, just pressing the PA. So for mastering the class in all its ways and different playstyles, I would probably give it a 7 out of 10 on the end, learning how much damage you can tank on more offensive builds, for example, getting comfortable and fluid with the different movement spells, not accidentally jumping, because as you probably know, spacebar is the Awakening swap stance, so a lot of even experienced Valkyries are still happening to jump around sometimes. So that all just comes with time and experience.
Okay, we talked in general things about an Awakening Valkyrie. Let's dive in. We are curious about your thoughts on the PvE situation of the class of Awakening Valkyrie. Could you provide us with a detailed information separately for early, mid, and end game?
It's a bit hard for me to judge on PvE on Valkyrie since the tagging system came out. I haven't PvE'd too much on it. I've tried it every once and then when there was changes. I'd say currently she's in an okay spot. You can pull decent numbers from what I know, but in my personal opinion, it requires a lot more effort and knowledge compared to other classes, being able to pull either the same or even better numbers. Also because there's no real good best in slot infinity combo for PvE. So personally, I wouldn't recommend it as a PvE tag or anybody that's looking for like a really good PvE class. You don't need a PvE tag when you're playing it, but most Valk players that I know do have a PvE tag and just have their Valkyrie as the PvP class mainly. So I would recommend you to have one as well.
I totally agree. For example, for early game, in before we had Volt Train, but they removed it, they nerfed it. We still have a Volt Train, but the stamina is the recovery of stamina is creating a problem. That's why early game got huge nerf. Is this still viable? Yeah, it is viable. For mid game, what is the most definitive thing for mid game? It's like pull skill. Yes, you have a echo, Heaven's Echo skill, and you can pull mobs, especially like Sacrians, etc. But overall, there are many classes that do not need that to do this. So much effort for average results. At end game, I tagged Valkyrie a month ago. Not gonna lie, it was surprisingly good. The damage was good, but as you said, infinite combo, infinite DPS is creating a very big problem, especially when you have a shy buff or when you have Z buff, E buff together. When your attack speed increased, character has many gaps. The gap mean is not a protection gap. You literally have no skill. I mean, you're using everything, Magnus, your bombs and everything you have, but there is no skill. It's because of the class design is mostly dependent on the cancels and the flows. And if you use them properly, I mean, you're just gaining insane amount of time, maybe 2-3 seconds free time in your skill, the cycle. That's why there's like a 2-3 second empty zone in the combo, and I couldn't find an infinite combo. What I'm trying to say, and you also said that it's average result with high effort. My recommendation, if you really like the class, if you really want to play the class, you will not regret. The reward will be satisfactory, but do not tag a class for PvE purpose. That's my recommendation.
Yeah, you don't need a PvE tag necessarily or like mandatory on it. But I would say over the course of grinding towards the hard cap, you will most likely find yourself going along with a PvE tag that's either more comfortable and easy on your hands, like Awakening Guardian, Awakening Witch or something in the end game, or it's just more enjoyable to you if you have any other class in PvE that you enjoy.
Yeah, you know what? While I was streaming, especially when I tagged the Valkyrie, people called me that, hey, Valkyrie seems pretty okay, pretty good. Hey, it's smooth. Why people call that? Of course, Miamigo, it will look smooth because I played the class more than 4 years, and I'm not even thinking while I'm playing the class. It's because it's like riding a bicycle. It's like a driving or something. It's in my reflex. I mean, in my brain is playing the class unintentionally. I'm not thinking what I'm doing. That's why it maybe looks smooth when you watch an experienced Valkyrie, but whenever you just hold that Lancy and the shield, you understand that something is wrong at the class.
Yeah, it's what I meant earlier with just requiring more knowledge than other classes, since you don't really have that like good of an infinite combo that you can just like start to finish. You know, somewhat need to know the cooldowns out of your head, like, oh, now this is ready and now this is gonna be ready. While other classes, you have like about maybe 10 skills or something, and you start with skill 1 and you end with skill 10, and you just start from skill 1 again, and that's just not really that possible on Valk.
Exactly. So let's talk about PvP. We are curious about your thoughts on the PvP situation of the class of Awakening Valkyrie. Could you provide us with detailed information separately for 1v1, 1vx, AOS, 5v5, Guild League, Node, Siege, and War of the Roses?
Well, I would say for 1v1, she can be very annoying to deal with for her opponent, especially once you have the right gear and you're being able to tank an enemy's combo and just stand up, heal yourself back up again with the triple heal. But you're still going to be able to either one combo or almost one combo most enemies if you're doing it properly. So that can be very frustrating for the opponent to deal with, especially if they don't have the same sustain as a Valkyrie. So if you're both just grabbing each other once, comboing, you will stand up being almost back full HP, and they are maybe below half HP. You're automatically going to be ahead of it, and by the next catch you either win the fight or you still won't lose the fight because your heals are going to get back up eventually if you're playing a bit more passive. For the 1vx, I would say she's not that good unless you heavily outgear your opponents. The class doesn't have a lot of protected CCs to either follow up on a catch that you initially land or like land the catch in the first place. So you'd probably struggle to one comboing people in the 1vx unless you heavily outgear them, and you can just go for a super safe protected combo out of your super armor spells. Especially if your enemy knows what you're gonna be doing and what they are doing, so that they can just throw a CC spell at you when you're trying to like re-CC during a combo. So I would say if you don't heavily outgear your opponents there's way better classes for it. I wouldn't necessarily pick her for the 1vx montage plays. In Arena of Zola, I think you can climb very, very high. I personally was one game short of the highest ranked Zola Incarnate last season and peaked at 2385 elo in the last Arena of Zola season. The utility mentioned earlier is just incredibly good in any group PvP content, and even though the heals are nerfed a lot in Arena of Solar, your ultimate is actually a pretty strong tool dealing very good damage in Arena of Solar. The fact that you can give super armor to your teammates is also just like worth gold in a 3v3 scenario. You're reliant on your teammates to a certain degree, as it's hard to 1vx on the class, as mentioned earlier. So you do need your teammates to apply damage if you do land catches, or even better if they are a class that is able to open up the fight. I personally, for example, love to fight together with other classes that are just very easy openers, like Gauntlets, like Striker Mystic, or like a Dracania, or anything like a Tamer, even something that's very easy to start engaging the fight in, and you can just play around them and make sure that they get to freely combo afterwards and don't die, or that your other DPS is like not getting pressured too much. For the 5v5 or Guild League, I just put that together because with Guild League being 10v10 now, I think the scale is somewhat the same for Awakening Valkyrie. I would say it's not that much of a difference. I would say you're mostly filling in the utility / tank role, and for sure less of a damage role in that type of scale. I would leave the damaging to the classes that really, really excel at it, like Wusa, Megu, Dracania, or like even Archers or something. Nonetheless, I would say it's one of the best classes in the Guild League content, at least in Europe. The current top performing guilds usually run one shy, maybe two shies, double Valkyrie, and then stack up on Wusa, Megu, Dracanias, maybe a Corsair or something. So no matter really what scale of PvP that you're going to be fighting on, you will always have a guild or your group looking for an Awakening Valkyrie if you know what you're doing on it. And the power of the super armor heal, giving the super armor to your allies, paired with the general healing power that we've mentioned earlier, being able to basically heal somebody up from 100 HP back to full HP, pressing 3 buttons, having a PA allowing you to keep your teammates alive, engaging, or when you get engaged, is just invaluable compared to so many other classes that are struggling at that. For Node War, Siege, and War of the Roses, I'm also going to put them in like one type of content because it's all above like 30-man scale. For this, it's kind of similar to before with Guild League or in general group content. You're, as said before, you're really, really strong at it. Every guild is going to be looking for you. Like if you're going to try it for a guild, you're going to have an easier time on Awakening Valkyrie compared to many other damages classes. For starting out in that type of content, I would highly recommend going with a more tanky build of double Kadri, simply because it allows you to make mistakes and it's going to give you a more forgiving experience compared to playing for full damage. If you decide later on that you want to have more damage, once you get more comfortable with it, it's perfectly fine. For starting out and learning, since you will make mistakes, you will have certain frames where you're not going to be protected, not knowing all the cancels yet. I would highly advise to focus more on the part of the healing, playing with the Kadris, being very, very tanky, being in your main blob. And then once you get more comfortable, you can start going for more aggressive crystals, more aggressive rings, for example, going in Ominous Ring or something. But that later on comes down to what you enjoy playing as. And it's also one of the nice things of the Valkyrie being like, hey, I have the possibility of, hey, I feel playing more damage today, or depending if you know your enemies, I can play more tanky, I can play more damage. No matter what, you will always have it.
Thank you. Is there a significant strong aspect of the class you're playing, or a significant weakness? What is the strongest thing for you? What is the weakest thing?
I would say like the strongest thing is that you can fulfill, as mentioned before, almost any role really. If your guild needs more healing power, like main rate tank power, you can fulfill that role. You can be very skirmishy, especially once you get better on it. You can be a pretty nice flanking threat, like even a flank squad is gonna be very happy about having 1 or 2 Valkyries for the fast engage with the new Hastiludium, for example. It's a super good engage tool. It can catch people from almost out of vision distance. Also allows you to be a very nice backline threat if needed. Catching those pesky archers on the backline, just free blasting. So I would say it's probably the strongest thing, that you can be whatever is required in your guild currently. And you are the only class that can give super armor to your allies. I've mentioned it before, it's insanely strong. If your ally gets CC'd and is laying on the ground, you can make him survive compared to any other class in the game, except for maybe a Shy that's gonna bubble him or something.
Thank you. Are there any classes that clearly dominate your class, or are there any classes that you can clearly dominate them, the counter matchups?
Argue that with the right build, you can win most matchups. Since you don't have super fast catchers, there is classes that is a lot harder or more annoying to deal with, like Fusas or Magus are gonna kite you for a very, very long time. You might get them eventually. It's gonna take time though, it's gonna be annoying and exhausting to deal with. But otherwise, if you have the right gear sets prepared, a lot of classes are gonna struggle with comboing you down, especially if they don't expect you to be super, super tanky. And once they do know and slot in for a lot more damage, then you're also gonna be still able to combo them down on a very, very tanky build. Military, for example, runs something like 280 AP and is still able to combo, or like still able to combo rather squishy players while having 470 DP.
Thank you. Is there a mechanics or skill in your class that you would like to be buffed or nerfed?
I would like to see some more PvE improvements so that it's on par with the better classes, especially considering the fact that it's more effort than the current top performers, I would argue. As for PvP, I don't think that the class needs buffs really. I would like the E-buff to be changed though. So for the people that are not aware of what the Valkyrie E-buff currently does, it gives you a buff that allows you to sprint forwards having a frontal guard and not consuming stamina. Now the issue with that is, while it sounds very, very good not using stamina for 30 seconds and having frontal guard sprinting, it doesn't allow you to properly use the normal W shift dash forwards anymore. And instead of having the normal super armor dash forwards, you have a front guard starting to sprint animation. If you stop it, then like you're not really protected. So it does grief you a lot of the times, to the point where, for example, in Arena of Solar, I sometimes don't even pop in and around at all, because I feel like downsides of not being able to normally dash heavily outweigh the 10% cast speed and 20 DP that you get, really. So the E-buff is somewhat useless compared to a lot of other very strong E-buffs. So either remove, even if they would just remove it, I would be happy, like the sprinting part of it, so I can safely pop the DP and the cast speed, or just give it something else instead. That would be very nice to see. About the nerf part, I know a lot of people hate the fact that you can give super armor to other players. It's a very, very annoying mechanic for others to deal with, especially in like 2v2, 3v3 type of scenario. If you catch the player that's not the Valkyrie, you always have to deal with, oh, he's gonna give him super armor, so he's gonna stand up, I can't properly combo. And a lot of people want it to be nerfed or removed. I personally like the fact that it allows for like an insane amount of support and playmaking. And instead, maybe my touch on nerfing that part would be removing the super armor from the current Rabam heal, so that if you want to go ahead and full heal somebody up to full HP, you need to use the SA heal in the first place so that you can safely pop the second heal, or you risk getting CC'd in the other heal if you don't want to use it.
Thank you. I totally agree the E-buff part. The E-buff sprint thing is just, instead of being useful, most of the time it was griefing me. But like, it just pretends you're like, you have many movement cancels in your skill kit. I mean, if you guys want to play the class, you will understand what I'm saying. There are many cancels. While you have your E-buff, those cancels are just, they're not working. And it is so annoying. And that's why I don't like E-buff most of the time. Like, if you just put in a scale, I like 40% and 60% I don't like. On the other hand, I would like to buff on the stats of E-buff. I mean, 20 DP and 10% attack speed. I don't know. It feels a little bit, I mean, outdated. Maybe some other classes that have that thing too. I mean, outdated E-buffs in the game. They should just some kind of rework, adjustments. They can completely change it. For example, they can add specific things for every E-buff in every class, like in Valkyrie, like in sprint with the front guard. But I don't know. It's some kind of a little bit sensitive situation.
Yeah, I do agree that especially like the newer classes, E-buffs seem to, or like not maybe the very, very new ones, but something like Archer or Guardian has ridiculous E-buffs if you compare them to some of the old classes. You do also get 50% resistances, I believe it is, which is somewhat useless as well, because you will most likely, if you play a tank build, you're gonna run around with like around 50% resistances by yourself. A Shy is gonna give you another 40%. So you're kept on resistances in any group PvP content anyways. So the 50% resistance is a useless stat in the E-buff in the first place. And then, yeah, it basically leaves you with 20 DP and 10% cast speed, which is a lot weaker compared to any other class.
Yeah, you're just carrying a big shield, a Lancia, it gives you 20 DP, but mi amigo Striker getting with just a glows with a 50 DP. It's an interesting situation. Okay, can we get a brief summary of the good and bad things of your class? Let's say that I want to tag, I want to play Valkyrie. What Valkyrie can offer me?
I would say if you get satisfaction of being a team player, seeing your team win, it's a very good choice. The satisfaction of, for me, for example, for landing a good vacuum and then afterwards seeing your guild roll over the enemies caught in it, or saving teammates with your heals is very, very nice if you're the type of guy to enjoy that. Also, you will have a pretty easy time finding a guild to play PvP in. As mentioned earlier, most guilds, at least on the Europe server, will be gladly taking you if you're playing Valkyrie, even though you're maybe lacking a little bit of gear here and there, simply because it's that strong of a class. If you're looking for things like huge kill feats, a special force commander title every siege, or just the 1vx montage moments to post on Reddit, or your new YouTube montage, I would say it's not the right class for that. You can play Archer Ranger for the titles in the siege, you can play Dracania Vuza or something, Megu for the 1vx moments and everything like that. I would say that's not really your class then.
Thank you. So we talked about Valkyrie, and thank you so much. Let's talk about game itself. What are your thoughts on BDO's current situation from past until now?
In my opinion, the quality of life that the game has increased in ways I've never seen it in a different game over the past 6 years. If you go ahead and look at the old footage from 2017, it was a terrible game looking from a convenience point of view for what the game had to offer with different marketplaces, silver weighing and everything. Like, you're gonna know it if you've played the game for a long time. You're gonna know the improvements that this game went through. I would say the introduction of capped content to cater to newer player bases is a good thing in general, or it has to be in the game, because otherwise the entry level of getting into PvP in Black Desert is just very, very high. If you need 710 gear score to even start out with PvP, not everybody wants to spend that amount of time in the game. So having capped content allowing you to start PvPing from a very early play, like just a week in or maybe 2 or even earlier, is very, very good. I would, however, like to see them cater a bit more towards the veteran player base, so that those don't feel like they're getting left behind a little bit.
Thank you. What do you think that the company does well and bad? Let's say that you are a new Mr. J. What would you like to add or remove?
I would say that currently the PvE class balance is probably at an all-time high, in my opinion. You can play almost every class without completely griefing yourself. There is better and there is worse choices, especially when it comes to how much, how many buttons that you need to press, like how much APM that you need on the class. But you can almost grind on every class without completely griefing yourself. As for PvP class balance and content, I feel like KR usually still is the region that they do care for most or listen to the most, which makes sense because it's a region where they're developing the game. However, I would like to see them also listen a bit more to the other regions. We've seen it multiple times in the past with the yellow offhand for the Elvia spots. You're gonna maybe remember the Grunel armor set and Nessa gloves for the PvE AP. Once KR found out about it and has been addressed, and KR people started abusing something that has been in the game for weeks and months abused on other servers, it got fixed within a week usually. So this is something that very clearly shows that the KR server is still the most relevant one when it comes to addressing anything for devs. Or another example is the Arena of Solar seasons, were usually dominated by one class. The first one, Succession Dracania, the second one, Succession Megu, the third one, Awakening Dracania. And most of the season, these classes didn't even receive a nerf, except for, I believe, Succession Megu. That did actually get nerfed during the season, was still very good though. But most of the times, there's like a super long time frame until a class actually does get a balance patch, which I don't think is necessary, because you know the classes that are underperforming or overperforming. So I think you could just actually touch them a bit earlier. If I personally was in charge, there's 3 things I believe I would do. The first one being removing resistances in PvP. A lot of people are going to like me for it. A lot of people are going to hate me for it. But I believe overall, removing the RNG aspect of PvP is going to be a very good thing. There is going to be adjustment needed to be done, but overall, remove the RNG part of PvP. Secondly, I would have Ringed Arena of Solar return and rotate it together with other PvP game modes like Guild League and Shadow Arena, for example. A lot of people aren't even going to know what it is. tournaments, but on a like 2 month basis, for example. So you have 2 months AOS, 2 months Guild League, and then 2 months Shadow Arena, and then you start again. So that no content is in the game for too long, so that it just gets boring because you've played it for like half a year now. It's the same everything. And there's like no huge down periods as well, because currently, for example, the last ranked AOS season has been, I don't even know how long, 8-9 months or something. People have been asking for it to return for months and nothing is really happening. And the third aspect being class balancing. We had a best in class tournament about 3-4 years ago. I don't remember exactly. I would host them yearly and take like the top 1 or 2 players from every region and give them a say in class balancing. It was the original plan behind that tournament when we had it back then. But from what I heard from a lot of these players that were invited to that table to give their input on the classes, they didn't really feel like they got heard. These players spent hundreds or thousands of hours PvPing on the class. They know what the class needs. They know what the class doesn't need. They can tell you also from the community, because these players will be very much in the class community. They know what the player base wants. So if you take like the best 1 or 2 players deemed from these tournaments from every region and throw them together and have them work something out or like work together with the devs on that class, I think it would generally make the player base of every single class probably a lot more happy, because they know, okay, our best players and most experienced players actually have some sort of impact on the class design in the end.
Yeah, for the final part, I totally agree. Not gonna lie. I don't want to be toxic, but I think this is not a toxicity. What is the biggest mistake of Perlavis? The biggest mistake of Perlavis, they pretend like they know everything better than anyone. Maybe you designed this game. I totally agree. You're a developer, and it's obvious that you do not have time to play this game in depth like Classmaster. Then at that point, you have to listen them. That's clear. That's what I want.
Yeah, I 100% agree here. The people that have gotten the godlike or like Gosu and Unrivaled title back in the tournaments, I don't think a single developer of Pearl Abyss is gonna have a better understanding of the class than these players that gotten those titles. They've spent hundreds or thousands of hours playing that single class alone in every PvP aspect in the game. Let it be Battle Arena, let it be RBF, let it be Node War, Siege, whatever. The devs don't have the time to play that much, which is perfectly fine, right? But if you have those players and they're like that committed to the class, you have to like deem them worthy of giving proper input to you as a developer, right? Like, in my opinion, you can't afford to not hear what they have to say after those tournaments.
Exactly. What advice would you like to give to newbies, returnees, and other players in the game?
An old friend of mine, when I started somewhat freshly with the game, said that BDO is a marathon and not a sprint. And I don't think that statement has ever not held up to be true, in my opinion. There's 28 classes, with most of them having 2 different specs, except for something like Shy Archer and Scholar. So let's say there's over 50 different playstyles in this game. One of them will suit you, one of them you will love, and you will have a great time. Test them out, play them if you think they look cool. If there's a class where you go like, oh, that design looks kind of nice, give it a shot, especially if you're early in the game. Your cost of re-rolling or just tagging is almost non-existent. Have fun with the game. You're gonna spend thousands of hours in the game if you decide to stick with it over the course of, for me, for example, 7 years by now. You will spend so much time in it. Play something that you actually have fun at. And don't be afraid to tag something else, no matter for what, even if you spend a whole lot of time on the other class already.
Thank you. We are reaching the end of the interview. Is there anything else you would like to add before we finish?
I would like to thank you very much for inviting me. If anyone does want to pick up Awakening Valkyrie, I'm more than glad to give advice to the best of my abilities. I don't believe I'm the best Valkyrie on the server, both mechanically and gear-wise, but if there's any way that I can help you out pick up the class, or even just get to try it, I would gladly do so. Feel free to DM me on Discord. My name there is ChampionJason, all together. Or just say hello in my stream. You're gonna find it somewhere linked below, I'm pretty sure. Otherwise, I would also like to recommend to you military_BDO on Twitch if you want to see another very experienced and hard-capped Valk POV spending a lot of time on Archer or playing Guild League and Node War.
I want to thank you to Jason. He just came and he just shared his thoughts, and they all priceless. On the screen right now, you can see his all social links. Please go and check me, amigo. If you have any question, you can ask to Jason, you can ask to Military, and they are waiting for you. If you have any question, probably they will love to help you. Thank you so much, Jason.
Thank you very much for having me.
Alright guys, do not forget, BDO is just a game. Have a nice game.